channel. In today's tutorial, we're going to make something that is so fun, so quick, so easy. You're going to want to make 1,000, I promise. Seriously, just trust me on this one. Today, we're going to make the packing pods. And these come to us from Spencer Og Patterns. Okay, packing pods, packing bags. Yes. We have like a theme this month, right? We're ready to travel. I'm ready to travel. It's been a winter. I need a break. I want to go on vacation. So we're just talking a lot about travel supplies, I feel like. These are packing pods. They are so quick, so easy. So let me just show you front and back. You can have an optional handle. You don't have to have a handle on these. These are not bags. These are specifically for packing your stuff and keeping it organized in your suitcase. Does anybody else use those? I use those too, and I buy them, and they are not cheap. Now we can make our own, and they're gonna be the cutest ones you've ever seen. It has one main zipper, open it up, and here's the inside. I'm gonna be using binding because you guys know how much I love binding. You don't have to. If you have a sewing machine that has a zigzag option, the pattern does instruct you how to use that, so you don't have to bind it. However, I do love me some binding. So I'm binding mine today. It is a back facing material. So the front of this one is this Theratex and the back is just the back of the Theratex. There's no lining in this. The only kind of lining bit you have is right here. But other than that, there's no lining. So this means there's not a whole lot of material to use for this. There's not a whole lot of steps. There's not a whole lot to do, but oh my gosh, it's a whole lot of awesome results. So this is the size medium, and then this one is the size small. Ignore the fact that my tag is upside down. I'm just gonna look at it like this. This is the medium, this is the small. So you can see they're quite a bit different. And I'm going to show you the small one here I made with water resistant canvas. So it's got beautiful structure. Again, water resistant canvas, you can have it fine on the back. So you're going to have to think about that when you're picking material today. What material is okay on both sides? Which one doesn't need a lining? Water resistant canvas is going to be probably the easiest option, I think something that most of us have. So this is the water resistant canvas, and then I also use the water resistant canvas binding on this one, and then just one zipper. This is a small, it is so cute. And the nice thing too about water resistant canvas is that it does hold its structure on its own really well. So just with the material and the binding, I mean, this is adorable. For the size medium, I did use Theratex. This is like a nylon material. Think Stony Clover bags. This is going to be luxurious. Okay, so this is one where it's like, if you really want a fancy bag set, you know, if you sell these that you can charge a good amount for, you're gonna wanna use something like this because this is beautiful. And then I use that adhesive nylon binding to go with it. Fast, easy, absolutely beautiful, so soft, so yummy. In today's tutorial, we're gonna be using a brand new to me material. This is material that I've never worked with before. I'm gonna tell you what it is in just a minute because I have forgotten. But it is a great option for this. It has a nice coated back, so it is like a waterproof material. It is a little bit stiffer, more structured than this stuff, but it's not as stiff and structured as vinyl. So I think it's gonna be a great option. Another great option would be wax canvas. Think Father's Day coming up. This would be an amazing Father's Day gift. Make all three of them, have a travel set and a beautiful wax canvas. As it's being used, it's going to kind of age and show its little wear and tear, but no tear, just wear. And it's gonna be amazing. You could also use quilt cotton for this. You definitely could. I wouldn't interface it. Honestly, if you're using a quilt cotton, I would not do any sort of interfacing to it. So the durability of it, the longevity of it, the usability of it with length, I don't know. But quilt cotton is going to be a material that you could easily just take and throw in the washing machine, which is a nice option. So lots to think about here, lots of options. Honestly, I really think you can't go wrong with this. I would not use a heavy vinyl or anything that has like a fleecy backing. You got to make sure that the back can get dirty and wet and it's easy to clean. You know what I mean? So like a fleecy backing on a vinyl is just not going to work for this. But other than that, like, oh my gosh, you guys, I want to make, here, this is what I do. I want to make a wax canvas set for Derek for sure. I also want to make like a princess set or like a Mickey Mouse set. I have family and I'm trying to convince them to come out to Florida to go to Disney. And it's like, if I can get them to go, I can make them like Disney sets, you know, and send it to them. It's just like a really exciting thing. So whether if it's for you or as a gift, like this is, put it down in your go-to gift patterns because this is something, again, and it's so fast. I busted out all three of these, cutting it all out, sewing it all up, busted out all three of them in just a few hours. It was so easy. I love it. So if you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shout-outs, leave them down in the comment section. We love Spencer Og Patterns over here so much. She's so good at coming out with these little unique ways to put these things together. And whether you're looking for a more complicated bag, she will walk you through that perfectly. Or something quick and easy like this one. Again, she's a lot of options for that. So I really appreciate that. Kind of like, there's a lot of options depending on my mood. I'm not stuck with a really long bag if I want to make a Spencer Ugg bag. You know what I mean? Also, Spencer Ugg patterns have their own tutorials by the designer, so make sure you go check it out. You're going to love her. They're amazing. All right, guys, let's get started. All right, so there is very little material you need for today's tutorial, which is so great. It depends on the size you're doing. I'm doing the size large. For the size large, you're going to need about 3/4 yard of material. Now, let's talk about what this material is going to be. This is all of it. You only have an exterior. There's no lining. It can be quilt cotton if you'd like, although I wouldn't recommend it. I don't know if it would last very long, especially since we wouldn't interface it. Wax canvas would be a beautiful option, especially if you're making like a travel set for your husband or your son or grandpa or something like that. That would be a really nice kind of rugged option. You could use water-resistant canvas, which is what we did before. You could use that nylon material, which I absolutely highly recommend. This is another type of material I'm using today. It's pretty cool. It has like a linen look to it, but it has this black plastic coating. So this is like a water resistant, probably waterproof material. I'm very excited about this because this will work fine as lining material. The biggest thing is that the inside isn't lined. So whatever you use, the backside needs to be okay. So if you were to use like a vinyl, and you had that fluffy, fleecy backing, I don't know if that would work very well because as it gets dirty, it'd be really hard to clean it. You know what I mean? So something that's easy to keep clean on both sides of the fabric. That's the point here. Which is why quilt cotton would also be fine because you can just throw it in the washing machine. Next, you're gonna have some zipper tape. And since I'm doing the size large, you're gonna need at least 34 inches of zipper tape for that. You can go longer if you'd like. Again, the smaller the bag, the less you're gonna need of all this stuff. I'm gonna be using binding, but I'm not using bias binding or anything like that. We're gonna make this quick. We're gonna use this binding, which is a similar material to this right here. So I'll have a link down below of where this came from. This was all gifted to me, but this is an adhesive binding. I'm so excited to use it. I love that it matches this material exactly. And it's lightweight. It's going to be easy to work with. I'm really excited to play with that. But instead, you could use the 1-inch wide water-resistant canvas binding, which is a nice option, or you could use that 1-inch wide like nylon adhesive or non-adhesive binding. There's so many options. You could, of course, also make your own bias binding using quilt cotton. Whatever you'd like. It's all pretty easy to work with. This is a very easy bag. To go with my zipper, I have a zipper pull, of course, and then I have my bag tag. So here's all the other stuff. Most of the stuff you won't really need, but it's nice to have. As always, I'm using a Microtex 8012 needle. My top thread, so the thread that goes through the needle, is a Tex 45 weight thread. This is from Wizardry Stitchery. It's variegated, meaning the color changes along the thread, which I love. And then for my bobbin, I have just a Gutermann polyester thread. I am going to be using a turning tool today. This is my favorite one. It's a metal one. You do have a couple little corners, pretty much just for the handle. So if you're not doing the handle, you really don't need a turning tool at all. I have a steam ripper and stiletto, and then I have just a regular stiletto that I keep by the sewing machine. I have a couple of drawing options because I'm not quite sure which one of these is going to really show up on the material, but there is going to be a place where I'm going to suggest you draw some lines, and you're going to want to keep track of where those are. And then I have a 1-inch by 6-inch ruler, a healthy supply of clover clips as always, and then I have just a regular pair of scissors and a little bit of double-sided tape. This is really just for the bag tag. All right, let's go through the pattern pieces. This is pattern piece A. You're gonna have 2 cuts of this. This is just the front and the back. Next, you have pattern pieces B and C. This is going to be for the gusset, so you have the top and the bottom, and then the zipper is gonna run right along the middle of these 2 pieces. Just 1 cut of each. Next, we have pattern pieces B and C. This is going to be for the gusset, and the zipper is just going to run right along the center of this. Just 1 cut of each of those. Then we have pattern piece D. This is for that hinge. So this is pretty much going to be what connects the 2 ends of the zipper together. So this is just the back of the bag, the little hinge. So when it opens up, the zipper doesn't go all the way around, stops at the hinge. So you're going to have 2 cuts of this. And then finally, completely optional, is pattern piece E, and this is going to be for the handle. Again, the handle is optional. If you're like, I really don't want to mess with the handle, then just don't, you don't need it. But it is a very cute little accent. All right, so the first thing we want to do is prep our main panels. And to do this, we want to mark midpoints on all 4 edges. Easiest way to do that is just to fold it. You can measure and all that if you'd like, but this is going to be quick and easy. Just fold it in half, pinch where that midpoint is, grab a pair of scissors, and then cut the teeniest, tiniest triangle off that corner. And when you open it up, you'll have a nice mark that you can see on the front and the back. That's why we do that, because sometimes we're not quite sure if we need to see the midpoint on the right side or the wrong side of the material. So by clipping just a tiny triangle, you'll always be able to see it no matter which way it's facing. So do this on all 4 edges for both pattern piece A's. The other little bit of prep I'm gonna do is add my bag tag. Now, I don't have a directional print here, but if you did, you'd want to make sure you keep an eye on that. I'll try my best to remind you of directions as we're working on this. But for my bag tag, I kind of change the distance on each one of these depending on how big the panel is. I think for this one, I'm going to measure down about 3 inches from the top, middle, and then with the double-sided tape on the back of my tag, I'm just going to center this and tape it down. You really don't have to be precise with this. Just do your best to get it straight, which is honestly the hardest thing for me. And now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm just going to top stitch along all 4 edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alrighty, once you have both your main panels prepped, you can set them to the side. Now if you haven't already, make sure you attach your zipper to the zipper pull. And if you want to sew down the ends of your zipper tape so you don't risk losing your zipper pull at any time, that you can go ahead and do that. I like to sew a little dangerously, so I'm just gonna leave them as is. So now grab pattern piece B, which is the skinnier gusset, and this is like too long for the frame, isn't it? You can't see the whole thing. But this is gonna be the skinnier gusset, and lay it right side up, and then take your zipper tape, and with the zipper closing towards the left and the zipper right side down, you're gonna line up the top edge of your zipper tape with the top edge of that gusset B, and then grab clips and clip these right sides together. So once you have these clipped together, we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along that long clipped edge at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you're using a zipper foot for this. Alright, once you have that sewn on, now what you want to do is you want to flip the material so they're both right sides facing up, and that seam is going to go behind the fabric, not behind the zipper tape. So if you have a material that you can iron, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, you're going to want to finger press this. And I will say this is probably the thickest material I've used so far. So I'm going to give it a good finger press. It's not going to stay, obviously, but it'll at least get like a fold where I want it. So when I go to top stitch this, my fabric kind of already knows where I want it to go. All right, once you have that folded in place, now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch right along the fabric side of that seam at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I know the pattern for that step tells you to do like a decorative zigzag stitch over the back, over the raw edge of your zipper tape and your seam. The only reason I didn't do that, my Bernina can do that, but the reason I didn't do that is because I know a lot of you guys are using a straight stitch machine that doesn't have the back and forth option. So I just wanted to show you, you can still just top stitch this, and it does, you know, it does the same thing. It holds the seam down. It's just not as pretty as if you did like a zigzag stitch, but that's okay. So now we're going to rotate this so that the skinny strip of fabric is on the top, the zipper's on the bottom. And now grab pattern piece C and lay it right side up, and then take your zipper unit and flip it so it's right side down. Now you can see my zipper tape is still longer than my material, which I'm fine with right now. So when I line this up, I need to make sure that that pattern piece B and pattern piece C short edges are lined up. Not like this, that's no good. Not like that, that's also no good. These two edges have to match up. So then I'm just going to clip these so that the zipper and pattern piece C are right sides together. I'm just going to clip along the entire long edge. So now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along that long clipped edge once again at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have that sewn on, you're going to flip this once again so that the seam and the zipper part go behind that fabric piece C. And then however you prep this before, either with an iron or just by finger pressing it, go ahead and repeat that so that you're pressing it right along where the stitches are, so we can get this as straight as possible, and it's less work we have to do at the machine. Alright, once you have that prepped, we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and if you want to do the zigzag stitching on the back, you're just going to flip this over so you're looking at the back of the zipper tape, and then zigzag right over the edge of that seam. Otherwise, if you want to just do a top stitching, we're going to top stitch once again on the fabric portion at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alright, so this is what your gusset should look like, nice and neat. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my scissors and just cut down the ends of my zipper tape so that the zipper tape is the same length as the gusset pieces. And then I'm going to grab a lighter, and just looking at the edge of my zipper tape, I'm going to melt down that edge so my zipper doesn't start fraying over time. There we go. Now you're going to grab your 2 pattern piece Ds and lay one of them face up And then take your gusset and lay it face down and match up the short sides. Now, if your pattern piece D is longer than your gusset, like mine is, that's perfectly fine. It just has to do with widths of zipper tape. I would just suggest finding one edge that you want to line it up with, because we will trim it down later, but for right now, you don't want it overhanging on the top and the bottom. So I'm just gonna have it overhang on the bottom a little bit, and I'm going to clip these short edges right sides together, keeping everything as straight as possible. And then you're gonna grab your remaining pattern piece D and you're gonna lay it right side down as well. So this one's gonna be right side down against the wrong side of your zipper. And just include this in those clips, lining up the corners and lining it up exactly with the other piece. There we go. Now we're gonna sew along the short edge right here at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. So now I have this with my zipper right side down, and I'm going to flip this back piece right here that's sewn on right side up. And then I'm going to pull up my gusset. So I have the bottom piece here. It's also right side up. That's on the right side of the zipper panel. And I'm gonna move my gusset over here towards the left. And I'm gonna take this short edge of my zipper gusset and I'm gonna line it up with that bottom short edge here. And then once again, since I lined up my D panel on the top corner, I'm gonna make sure I do that on this side as well. Don't line it up on the bottom corner if it's a little bit taller than your gusset, like mine is. So I'm gonna line it up just like I did on the other side. Short edges, right sides together, lining it up on the top right corner. Now the fun part. You're going to take this folded over part of your zipper gusset and give it kind of a tight little cinnamon roll. Just roll it in like this. There we go. So that you can grab this left short edge here of your other pattern piece D, and you're gonna wrap it around to meet up with that clipped short edge over here, so it's right side down against the back side of your zipper, and just match it up with the other pattern piece D that's on the back of the zipper, or on the right side of the zipper. There we go, just like that. So this is how it should look. It's all twirled inside of there. I have one pattern piece D, the zipper gusset, and then the other pattern piece D. And we're gonna sew along this short edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Once you have this sewn together, you're just gonna pull that center out and straighten all this out. Just gonna flip this so that those two D panels become wrong sides together, just like that. They're gonna naturally fold that way as you pull on it. Straighten everything out, best of your ability. There we go. Make sure it's not twisted in any weird way. Get it all flattened out so it's right side out. This is how it should look, just like this. All right, so now we're gonna go to the sewing machine, flatten this out. And do your best here to press down your material right along those two short seams you just sewed. We want these to be nice and straight and flat. There we go. And now what we want to do is we want to top stitch along the D panels on each side at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm only doing these short edges. I'm not doing the long pieces just yet because I am still going to trim down this bottom piece. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a ruler and a rotary cutter, and I'm just going to line up my ruler on both ends, these corner bits of the overhang. And I'm going to trim down this bottom piece here so it's the same height as the rest of the zipper gusset. Okay, so once you trim it down, it should look just like this. How cute is that? And so now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and now I'm going to top stitch along the top and bottom long edges at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. This is really just a basting stitch, but I don't want this to cause any problems on the next step, so keeping this all as one unit is going to be really helpful. Okay, you can set this aside for just a moment. Now we're going to work on the handle, which is pattern piece E. This is completely optional. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to, but it's also completely adorable. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this in half, long sides together. It doesn't really matter if it's right side or wrong sides. We just want that middle mark right there. See how I have a midpoint mark? Now I'm going to take my long edges and fold them back, wrong sides together, to meet that midpoint. If you want to use some clips here, depending on the material, go ahead and do that. I haven't used double-sided tape for this handle. You could, I guess, but we're going to be flipping it around a bit, so the double-sided tape honestly might just be more of a headache than it's worth. So do this for both long edges, folding them wrong sides together. Okay, so now we're going to call this back piece here that has the raw edges meeting the wrong side, and we're going to call this front piece here the right side. So now what you want to do is you want to fold this long sides together, right sides together, like this, okay? So the back should look just like this with the raw edges poking out. We're not worried about the whole long edges. We're just worried about the short edges over here. So I'm just going to remove a couple clips, and I'm going to clip this in place. So I'm just focused on these short edges. The reason for the clips along here is really just to create a fold to make it easier a little bit later, but we're not sewing there. So now, just focusing on the two short edges, not the long folded edges, we're gonna sew along these two short edges at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end on each side. All right, so now I'm gonna remove the clips on those long folded edges. Then I'm gonna grab my scissors, and I'm going to cut little 45-degree angles right along the seam, because this does get bulky, and I'm a little worried with this material because it is the thickest material I've used yet for this bag. This is where the turning tool is going to come in handy, because now what you want to do is you want to flip this out so that those raw edges get tucked in. And it can be a little stiff, especially if you're using stiff material. So do your best to just finagle those corners, and this is where a turning tool comes in handy, and really poke out those corners. All right, so once you have those corners poked out, get that squared away. You can add a clip there to keep it nice and straight. Just make sure you keep tucking in those raw edges. And then just, again, tuck in those long raw edges into the very center. And then if you need to use clips, use some clips to flatten this out, straighten it out, get it the way you want it. But see, now we don't have any raw edges. There's this pretty little handle that you can attach with sewing, with rivets, however you want. And you don't have any raw edges, which is nice. Okay, so now I'm gonna take this to the sewing machine, and I'm gonna sew around all 4 edges. I'm gonna top stitch around all 4 edges at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance and backstitch at the beginning and the end. Alrighty, so when I attach the handle, I'm actually a little loosey-goosey. I'm not that particular about this. I don't feel like it needs to be. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fold, we're gonna attach the handle on the D strip here. So I'm gonna fold this in half, matching up the seams on both sides over here on the left. I'm trying to find the midpoint mark on the D strip. So I'm just gonna pinch it. And I'm gonna grab my air erasing marker. And I'm just gonna mark right where that pinch is, just to get the midpoint mark. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Okay, there we go. So now you can have some fun with this. So you can see your handle is pretty much just like the same length, but if you want it to be a little bit poochier like this, you could measure in 1 inch from each of your seams and sew it down there or rivet it on. If you want it just to be a little bit, you can go just 3/8 of an inch. It's totally up to you. All right, so I just used my ruler and I measured in 3/8 of an inch from each midpoint area. And what I'm gonna do is, I'm not even gonna tape this down. I'm just gonna do that at the machine. But I'm gonna line up my short edge with that mark centered on that midpoint. It's so small that you should be able to eyeball this. And I'm just gonna make a teeny tiny little rectangle. Like I'm just gonna follow the top stitching I already have, and then I'm just gonna make it go about 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch away, and just a little tiny rectangle. If you prefer to use rivets here, you can, but I'm gonna make one small rectangle on one side, and then I'm gonna pull up the other end of the strap, and I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, so just I have like a little tiny bump in my strap. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end of these. All right, how cute does that look? Nice little handle. Once your gusset's all ready to go, now we need to mark some midpoint marks. So what we're gonna do is we're going to just fold this so that the seams of that back piece, that deep piece, come together just like that. And the middle of this is going to be one midpoint mark. So I suggest using scissors for this. And then keeping this together, you might find it easier if you add a clip here. You're gonna go along the long edge of your gusset, keeping it flat until you get to the other side over here, and mark a midpoint over there as well. And then repeat this for the other side. And then once you have those, you're going to open this up, and you're going to take those midpoint marks you just made, and you're going to pull them together. I do suggest adding clips to keep it straight. And then you're going to straighten out that long edge, and you're going to find the midpoint marks between the midpoint marks. So you're marking this into quarters. So do this for both sides. You're going to do it for both long edges, both midpoint marks. So you should have 4 marks on each edge by the end of this. Alrighty, so now we're going to attach this to the panels, and then we're done. I'm going to do the attaching, the sewing this on different from the pattern because I struggle. I struggle with sewing. So this is what's easiest for me. So I'm just going to show you what's easiest for me. First thing you want to do, especially if a directional print or you have a tag and you want to figure out how this is going to go, we got to line this up. And I'm going to tell you, I've made 2 of these so far, and neither time have I done it right. So 3rd time is a charm. That's what we're going to say. I want the handle portion to go on the top, right? And I want the short part of my gusset to go on the top as well. So that means I want it in the end to be like this, right? My main panel with my tag on the top, and then the sides just like that. Let me show you what I've done so far. So on my first attempt, I got the handle and I got the short part, but my tag was upside down. I needed to flip this the other way. Okay, that was okay. That was the first try. Second try, I got my tag the right way, I got the handle in the right spot, except it's on the back panel instead of the front panel. So the goal is for it to be right here, right side up. Let's try it. So in order for me to accomplish this, I kind of lay it out like this is how I want it in the end, right? So that means this midpoint right here needs to match up with this midpoint right here, right sides together. So I'm just gonna flip this over and get those two matched up, right sides together. All right, once I have that clipped, we're gonna flip this gusset so it's wrong side out. And then we can just kind of rotate this around. There we go. And now I'm gonna work on one edge at a time because it's easiest for me. So I'm gonna grab a roller and I'm gonna grab a marking tool. Right now, I'm looking at the bottom right corner of the main panel. I'm gonna mark 3/8 of an inch in from that bottom right corner on the bottom edge and just make a mark. I'm gonna do the same thing on the bottom left corner, and I'm doing this on my front main panel. 3/8 of an inch in along the bottom edge. All right, now making sure this is all still lined up, I'm going to clip my gusset right sides together, but only with this bottom edge, not the whole thing, just the bottom edge. That's it. So I'm going to flatten it out past the edge of my main panel. And now I'm going to tell you, this is tricky to do on the smallest version. The smallest is probably the hardest when it comes to the gusset because you just don't have a whole lot of material. But the bigger the bag you're making, the more of the gusset can overextend and the easier this is going to be. Okay, now I'm going to grab my silver ink pen because what I want to do is I want to transfer those marks to my gusset because the gusset's what I'm looking at right now. You could have also just done this on the back panel of your main panel and then sewn it with the main panel backside up, whatever you want. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to find those marks that I made on my front panel. There it is. I'm going to straighten this out, flatten it out, and I'm just going to mark the back of my gusset because those marks are my start and stop point for sewing. So I'm going to do the same thing over here on the right. So now what I'm going to do, again, just focusing on this bottom edge or top edge, I guess this is going to be the top edge. I'm going to sew from one mark over to the other mark at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to backstitch at the beginning and the end. All right, so once you have that stitched, what you want to do now is where the stitching starts and stop, we want to cut into the gusset, only the gusset. So what we're going to do is we're going to move, I'm going to pull this gusset up and move that main panel down. So I don't need to cut into the main panel. And right pretty much at my mark, or right where you start and stop stitching, cut straight up from the bottom edge of the gusset, very close to those stitches. You don't have to touch them, but get pretty close to them. So same thing on the side, other side over here, pull that main panel out of the way. It's not the end of the world if you clip into it, you just don't need to. And cut up towards those stitches. There we go. All right, so let's flatten this out. We're gonna repeat this with the other long edge. So this part here, this is considered the top. So let's just put that at the top over there. Should be good. And then we're going to take the bottom edge of our gusset and we're going to pull that down so that the midpoint mark matches up with the midpoint mark on the bottom edge of your main panel. Line those up and clip together. And you can clip these together after you mark your 3/8 if you'd like. You can do this after the next step, but I'm just going to do that for now. So now I'm going to grab my ruler once again, and on the main panel, I'm going to measure in 3/8 of an inch from the right side. And I'm going to mark a little tick on the bottom edge of my main panel. I'm going to do the same thing on the left side over here. 3/8 of an inch in from the left side and mark a tick mark. And then I'm going to flatten out my gusset along this bottom edge here and clip it right sides together all the way to the end. Do this on both sides. And you can see it's pretty easy. It's not fighting me. It can go off the end a good amount, which is what we want. Again, with the smaller one, you don't have as much wiggle room, but it is cute. All right, once again, I'm going to transfer those marks to the back of my gusset because the back of the gusset is what I see when I'm sewing. So I'm just going to use my vinyl pen here All right, and once again, I'm just gonna sew along this clipped edge from mark to mark at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. All right, and then once again, I'm gonna lift up the gusset away from the main panel and cut into the side of the gusset straight up from the edge close to the stitches. And I'll show you why this is important in just a moment. So that's the most marking and planning you have to do. So now I'm going to work on the side. So I'm just going to flatten this out and pull apart the gusset just like this. I'm going to grab that midpoint mark on my gusset for the side part and then the midpoint mark on the side of my main panel, and I'm going to pull these right sides together and clip together at the midpoint. And then this is easier to see if we flip it over. As we get to these corners here, you can pull the gusset and you see where we clipped into the gusset, it's going to spread out. So it's going to give you a nice little box. So this way you're not fighting it, trying to curve around a sharp corner, which is nice because who needs more stresses in their life? Not me. So you just want to finagle it and kind of pull this out and flatten out that main panel. That's the idea. Flatten out the main panel at that corner, and then the gusset will just go with it. There we go. So now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and pretty much just from that corner where it splits to the next corner where it splits, I'm going to sew along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. Okay, so you see you have a nice boxed corner over here, so we're going to repeat that with the other side. So once again, I'm just going to pull that main panel and flatten it out. Match up those midpoints first. Clip those together. And then as I flatten out the corners, the gusset will just go with it. And I'm going to clip along this edge. And then once again, I'm just going to sew along this edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, starting and stopping at where that corner is on the gusset, and backstitch at the beginning and the end. Wow, I was wondering about this stuff. I was wondering what the backing of this would be like. And it is sticky, but it is the same type of backing as this, so it's thicker. This is pretty thick material here, which is cool. I'm a little worried about how this is going to go. I think we'll be okay, though. It's just a little bit thicker, so this might be more of a heavy-duty bag than the other ones I've done. So now I'm going to grab my binding, and what I'm going to do is I like to pre-fold it, so I'm just going to fold it in half, wrong sides together, long sides together. You see it has this paper on it, and that is for the adhesive, so I will remove that as I'm attaching it, but not beforehand. And if you don't want to do binding, and you have a zigzag stitch option on your machine, the pattern does give instructions on how to utilize that to create a cute stitch to hold down these raw edges without having to use binding. Okay, so let's talk about how we're going to attach this binding. I'm going to remove part of the paper, not to let it fold too much, and I'm going to lay my material along the back of this binding, lining up the raw edge with that midpoint fold, and then you can just wrap this around. There we go. It is pretty sticky. This is, I mean, it's if you're having a hard time keeping it stuck, you can always use clips as well. The stickiness does work really well. I'll tell you how it works with my machine. I'm a little worried about the stickiness of this. It seems a little bit stickier than other stuff I've used, which is going to be great for industrial machines, but for me it might be a challenge. So I'm going to go to the edge over here. Once I get to a corner, I'm going to rotate this. Again, remove the paper. And before I work on the corner, I'm just going to fold this down, and I'm going to line up the midpoint mark with the short edge here on the side. And as I fold this down, I want this right here, I want the left side raw edge to continue going straight and create like a 45-degree angle, just like that. And then I want this to fold down and wrap around the side so that I have like a nice little 45-degree pinch point. If it's not perfect, that's fine. On the back side here, you're going to want to finagle it a little bit too. So I like to just kind of push one side over, push the other side over. If you wanted to have more of a 90-degree angle, that's fine. If you want to tuck it in and have more of a 45-degree angle, that's fine. Just take your time with these corners and unstick it, restick it, get it how you want. And then you can continue on attaching the straight edges just like we did, and then repeating all of that for the other three corners. All right, and then so once I get to the end, I like to let it overlap the beginning, usually just by like an inch or so. This is kind of, I did it kind of long. We'll see how that goes, because I am worried about the stickiness. I am. But at the same time, it's very easy to unstick. Like, I had no problem. I had to unstick a couple corners and redo them, and I had no problem whatsoever with that. So we'll see. Now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to top stitch this in place either at 3/8 of an inch or a 1/4 inch seam allowance, whichever is easier for you. If you're worried that you're not catching the back, then do a smaller seam allowance. So 1/4 inch seam allowance is going to make sure you catch the front and the back. 3/8 inch might be a little bit closer to the raw edge, but you run the risk of it not catching the back. And make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Use a zipper foot for this. It's going to be easiest. Okay, wow. No problem whatsoever sewing over that. Absolutely no problem sewing over that adhesive. It did not gum up my needle at all. My needle's totally fine. There's nothing gummy on it. Ugh, I love this stuff. This stuff is great. It is thicker, which honestly I really like. Lightweight is great too, but this is going to add a lot of structure to bags. And this is also going to be great for those of you with an industrial machine, because I know sometimes with industrial machines that can be temperamental with thinner material. This is some good stuff. I like this stuff. I'm happy with that. All right, so this is how it should look. I'm going to take a sneak peek. No, I'm not. I'm not going to turn it out. Make sure you have some of the zipper unzipped a little bit before we attach the back panel. So grab your back panel, and the top edge is going to go along the top edge here where the handle is, and lay it right side down. And let's, once again, just do this section by section. So I'm going to match up the top edge here. I'm going to match up those midpoint marks. And then I'm just going to flip this upside down so I can see the right side of my back panel down here. And I'm going to grab my marking tool and a ruler, and I'm going to mark 3/8 of an inch in from the left edge, just on the bottom panel. Do the same thing on the right side, 3/8 of an inch in from the side. And then I'm just going to, however is easiest, clip these right sides together. So now we have more structure here. So it's a little different than the first time. It's going to pull in places more than it did the first time. But again, with the bigger size here, you should be able to pull that gusset out towards the edge and get it flat. Do the same thing on the other side. And then I'm going to grab my silver ink pen here, and I'm going to transfer those marks to the back side of my gusset. And the reason I'm using a silver ink pen is because I wouldn't be able to see the air erasing marker on this material. That's the only reason. If I had a lighter material or a more fabric-y material, I would just use the air erasing marker. So that's why you always have a couple options. You use what you can, right? So now we're going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew from one mark to the other at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and the end. If you find it's difficult to sew with the gusset side up, you are more than welcome to sew it like this. However, it is easiest. This is more structured material, so this is a little bit harder than the other bags, but I'm really excited to see how this is going to look in the end. Okay, and if you want to make this easier, actually, if you unzip this, that might actually be quite a bit easier for you. Where am I? Over here. So now, looking at the back of the gusset, again, we're going to take some scissors, and we're going to snip up from the bottom edge where we made our 3/8 of an inch tick mark. We're going to go straight up from the edge to the thread. Just very close. Very close to it. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to open this up, and now we're going to pull the bottom edge of our back panel, right sides together with the opposite midpoint mark on your gusset. And if you open up your zipper like I did, it could be a little complicated, so just make sure. Okay, everything looks good. Now I'm going to flip this over so I'm looking at the back side of the gusset. I can even move that thing out of the way. There we go. And once again, I'm going to mark my 3/8 of an inch mark on the back main panel along the bottom edge on both sides. And then I'm just going to clip along this bottom edge, keeping it nice and flat and right sides together. And then once I have it all clipped, I'm going to transfer those marks to the back of my gusset so I can see what I'm doing when I'm sewing. And now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew from mark to mark at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Again, if keeping the zipper open is helpful, then do that. I'm going to tell you, it is going to be helpful. It's going to be a lot easier if you open your zipper and do this versus if you keep it closed. Alrighty, now once again, clip into the seam so that it can spread. Nice. Alright, so now we're going to work on the short edges. So we're just going to pull that back panel. I know this gets a little crazy because of this flap. I hope I'm not confusing you. We're going to pull that back panel, right sides together with the side of the gusset. Match up those midpoint marks as best you can. If for some reason your stuff has shifted and your midpoint marks don't make sense, then just flatten this out. This is the biggest size, and it's still not that big. So you should be able to just pull this and flatten it out. The nice thing is you should have no pleating, no wrinkles or anything like that here. This should be easy. Okay, so now once we have the side done, we're going to sew from corner to corner. And the corners are where the gusset splits at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Alrighty, once you have that side done, repeat for the other short edge. Just again, see, if you don't even have to worry about the midpoints, just flatten it out. You see how perfectly that comes? Because of the way that the gusset can expand where it needs to or come together where it needs to. I love that. Makes it so if you made a little mistake somewhere, if your seams aren't perfect, if your cutting wasn't perfect, it's still gonna turn out pretty perfect. All right, and then sew along this clipped edge, again, corner to corner, 3/8 inch seam allowance, and backstitch at the beginning and the end. All right, now you're gonna attach the binding the exact same way we attached the binding before, so I'm not gonna walk you through that because it is exactly the same, but I'll meet you back here after I get done attaching this binding the second time. All right, so I did my binding. Man, this looks really good. Okay, so now we have to turn it right side out. So you just flip it right side out and then work to poke out those corners. Now, depending on how stiff your material is, those corners can be a little tricky to poke out, but the binding is going to help a lot with getting nice structured corners. So you can flip these out top and bottom separately and just work on those corners for each one. Okay, so I got corners poked out. I gotta zip this up. I gotta see how this looks. And I finally have my tag in the right spot. I'm so happy about that. So here's the large, here is the medium, and here's the small. And I bet I can fit them all inside of each other, huh? So here's the medium. I'm just gonna tuck the small in there. Oh man, this is so cool. I love these. And then I'm going to tuck the medium into the large. Perfect. Perfect fit. And look at that. You have all your packing cubes in one item. Oh my gosh, this is so fun. I seriously want to make so many of these. I hope you love making this. This is so big, right? This is good. And the material is so good. The structure of this one. Holy guacamole. Definitely. I don't know if I would make the small one with this material because I think it would fight me quite a bit, but the large, you got to get some of this stuff. You got to get, I'll have a link down below for the material, for the binding. You got to get some of this stuff. It is so stinking good. It looks like you took a lot of time to make this bag. You did not. It looks like you used like a lot of layers of material. You did not. This is, oh man, secret pattern, right? Secret material, secret pattern, because it looks like it was a lot more effort than it was. I'm obsessed. I love it so much. Okay, so again, this is the large. Let me stand up. This is the large. This is the medium. So here they are together. Let me see, put them corner to corner, see? Good amount bigger. And then, here's the small. So, boop, 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 boop. Try to hold them. There, all three of them are together. And they do all stack inside each other beautifully. I'm obsessed with this pattern. I'm not even joking. I am going to be making so many more of these. Anybody I know, friends, family, if anybody's traveling, you're getting a set because I can't stop making these. This is a quick morning project, you know? Like it's morning over summer or on a weekend and you just want to get in the sewing room but you don't have all day. You cut this out, you sew it up, you're done. Like I love it. I'm so grateful that I get to make these and I get to film them because wowza, wowza, wowza. Thank you so much. I hope that you guys enjoy making this as much as I do. If you share them on social media, please make sure you tag me. Please make sure you tag Spencer Rogg. I can't wait to see your guys' version. My mind is going crazy with options and ideas and materials, so let me see what you're making. Pay attention to social media if you want to see my other versions. I'm at OklaRoots on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and I don't know, wherever else there's social media. I hope you guys are having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.